us, it's really important to make sure we identify who the players are that are fasting. There's no specific rules in terms of we can say you can't play or train because you're fasting, but the most important thing for us is that we communicate with the player. Also, we respect that the individuals who are fasting have been doing this for a very long time, and they also know their bodies better than we do. So the communication around how they're feeling just day to day, you know, is the most important thing for us. So we know the period that they're fasting, and we ultimately know that they will feel slightly different than they do, you know, when they're full of fuel. So the initial period, let's say the first week when they fast, we're a little bit more conservative with their training load here. Again, it doesn't mean we're going to reduce things for the sake of it. We communicate with them extensively to make sure how they're feeling. But the first week we're a little bit more conservative, and we might just modify their training load. So they will train and participate in training and games and matches and gym, but we might just reduce the volume of what they do in that first week, just so they can get you know, the positive adjustment to the new feelings and things like this. So Greg's now taken on a bit more of a role of looking after the nutrition with a little bit more detail. I feel we were doing that very good, but now Greg sort of helped us add that little element of making sure we get a little bit more individual, which I think is crucial. Communication is massive with us, but the players who've been fasting for a very long time know their bodies very well. We provide them at the start of their fasting period with essentially like a document that we've made for them that just highlights the key elements that we think they need to focus on when the refeed period happens. So making sure that they, you know, restore their carbohydrates, making sure they're eating adequate protein, making sure they're using that feeding window as optimally as they can, and also replenishing electrolytes and hydrating properly and all these sorts of things. So we provide them with a document which is working really well and that they understand now. We give them little bits of supplementation to take home. I can reference, you know, some protein and electrolytes there, a few other bits and bobs. But yeah, we just manage them as best as we can. We had a meeting actually with them last week. So we're ahead of time just to make sure we can support them as best as we can. And yeah, it's just an ongoing communication really from our side with those guys. I mean, ultimately I'll go back to communication. I think, yes, at clubs that may not be as high level as Malmö FF, I think there potentially is a risk that players who fast could potentially try and hide that from the coaches. I understand the psychology of that and how they would want to not let it take away from maybe them losing their spot in the team and the things like this. So I also think that's normal. So I get that side of it. But I guess what I would say to those clubs is it's kind of their duty of care to make sure they know the players and the individuals they have within the group and the squad. Make sure they can identify the players that will be fasting and participating in Ramadan. And if they know that ahead of time, I think that's the most important thing, because then you're organised, you can prepare for that. And again, you can just communicate with them and just make sure we're aware, you know, there's no problem. We just need to communicate and we can adjust and look after you as an individual the best as we can. So there's a risk for sure, but I think the most important thing is making sure that as a club you're educated and organised and prepared on that. I guess the biggest challenge that you could have is we could do everything we could from a training load perspective to try and reduce the volume of work. But then it's around, okay, if the player is feeling something that might not be particularly normal, whether that's I'm stiff or tight in a certain area, you know, then that's up to the player to make sure they communicate that to not only myself, the coaches, but more importantly, the medical team. We're quite a good family unit here at Malmö FF, so we communicate everything very regularly. So Henke is very good at making sure that when we have our daily meetings, these things also get mentioned. So me and Henke have already been briefed and we've had a discussion around Ramadan already, and we've already spoken with the players. We have a plan that when a couple of days before Ramadan actually starts, that this is going to be a mini presentation in the meeting, just to make sure that everyone is aware, because as you say, the transparency is really important, because we want to make sure that the rest of the group also understand the situation that these players are in, and they can also support them as, as they need to, but then also understand if they're feeling a bit low, or if training quality might be reduced, or whatever it may be, their understanding of the situation. So we're very clear and transparent here at Malmö FF, and I think that's important for all clubs to make sure you're on the same page. I think I'll try and say it like this. I think the best thing you can do as a club or an organisation is educate yourself on Ramadan and what that entails, and then also try and get an understanding of fasting and how that affects the body from a physical perspective. I think that's the biggest starting point for me. Then it's just making sure that with the education then you're prepared and organised, so you know when Ramadan is, obviously, and then it's just the communication with the player. So simple solutions might just be you communicate with them how they're feeling. If they're feeling a little bit low, if that's a word, you can just make simple adjustments to their training volume. So you could still keep them in training, but they might just do 75% of the session, or they might do a reduced number of games in training, or whatever it may be. I think the key is just communication, making sure you're educated, and making simple adjustments to their training volume, I think is the best way to go for now.